a win, and it's really fun. Yay! Offensive stylistic changes spurred it on, and we're talking about it next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It is your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Smiles abounding everywhere because the Jazz won a game last night. And as much as that's not what the season is about, that is way more fun than getting your head knocked in by the middle of the third quarter every night. Excuse me, all choked up about it. Locked on Jazz. Woo! It's a tough start to the show. A little granola caught in the whatever pipe. Locked on Jazz is your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. And we are free and available on every podcasting app as well as on YouTube. So please, thank you for joining us. To the everydayers, you're the best. We are free on everything. Our newsletter is free. I haven't checked the update, but Empty the Noggin is already out today. If you have subscribed to go to Locked On Daily and subscribe to the Locked On Jazz Daily free newsletter. You'll have gotten Empty the Noggin first thing this morning, even before I got the podcast out, a little later than usual. Today. And I do want to share with you guys that the Locked NBA 24/7 channel on YouTube is now up and running. So it's 24/7 all day long NBA talk from the best podcasters in the country on their team. I was just listening to Danny Cunningham talking about the undefeated Cavaliers after Milwaukee win. It's great fun bouncing from game to game to game. So make sure you check that out. I hope you really enjoy it. If you're on video, we'll send you there afterwards. All right. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We have a bunch of breakout performances of individuals. Keyonte George, John Collins, Walker Kessler. I thought Cody Williams looked really different in the game as well. We'll talk about all that. There were a lot of growth things. There were some reasons why that was a really good matchup. We'll talk about that, but we're going to start with what was really a great work by the coaching staff and players to kind of make some stylistic changes that allowed the Jazz to play a much different game last night. So, when Taylor Hendricks and Lauri Markkanen both got hurt, the Jazz had to go through all training camp. They're going to play 5 out. Walker was going to play handoff game at the top. John Collins was going to be able to shoot it, play 5 out, driving, working, If the big guys are in the baseline, they're going to slice to the basket, as you saw the other night when they went to 4 out because they had the injuries. There were 3 occasions where guards drove through the ball to the corner and John Collins had left the corner because John Collins was now playing power forward. So he needed to stay there where Taylor gets all of his corner threes, or sometimes Lauri gets his corner threes. And instead, John, thinking that he was the 5, because that's what he did all of training camp, was slicing, and then there was no one there to catch the pass. So shoot around, the Jazz really just institute, like, hey, everything we're doing now is got to be 4 out. And 4 out means that the center, the big guy, goes and sits underneath the basket and plays in the dunker spot, Walker or Drew Eubanks, and that Filipowski and John are now playing 4s. And that's just the reality of how we're playing right now because of injuries and everything else. We'll go back to 5 out spacing at some point, which is Will's preference. But inside of that last night, the Jazz threw 377 passes. Okay, well, what is that? It's the second most passes by any team in any game all season. Toronto has one game where they threw 399. Put it in perspective. In the opening night against Memphis, the Jazz threw 267 passes. They threw 100 fewer passes in that game. Now, I'm not saying, don't misunderstand this. One big misnomer is that passing actually leads to better offense. That's actually not true. If you have an isolation guy who can just beat everybody, you just do it. Kyrie, Luka. But one of the things that was really clear about the Jazz, and Sarah Todd actually asked Will about this after the game, before the game last night, is that we were catching. There's a concept in the league called 0.5, which is you get the ball and within 0.5 seconds, you make your decision. You either shoot, pass, or drive. And we were like 3.5. Catch, dribble, survey the scene. Can I try to score? Then move it. And our tempo and our offense was just totally stagnant and just sitting still and looked tentative because of it. And I think was tentative. Guys, And Will's like, first problem is everyone was trying to figure out how they were going to score first. So you then catch it. How do I score? Put it on the deck. Nothing going. Now distribute to the next guy. No advantage made. And we're just stuck in mud. Last night, 377 passes, second most by any team in the league. It's been building. Like, give Will some credit here. If you go to Denver, we threw 362. You go to San Antonio, we actually only threw 281. So kind of coming out of the San Antonio and the Sacramento games where we were down in like 200s, 300, Golden State were 300, Memphis 267, we pushed it. Against Dallas, which we actually had 91 passes that led to shots. Last night we had 89 passes that led to shots. Against San Antonio, we only had 79. So that, now this is tricky a little bit because we were turning the ball over at such a terrifying rate that you start throwing more passes and you increase the chance to get more turnovers. But a lot of our turnovers were guys dribbling. There's no common thread to all of our turnovers right now. But a lot of our turnovers were guys just driving into the middle of the lane, getting themselves into trouble, and then getting the ball knocked away or thrown away, or then they have nowhere, they throw it somewhere. And a live ball turnover is really different than a dead ball turnover. Last night, we didn't turn it over. Now, if we talked about for those everydayers here on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, you've heard this. The Bulls only force 10% of opponents' possessions into turnovers, which is the lowest rate of any team in the NBA. So this was a nice matchup for the Jazz in that sense. And the Jazz only turned it over 11% of their possessions last night. So the Jazz were a little bit more than the Bulls average, but not, thank goodness we didn't go turn it over 20% of the time against a team that doesn't force turnovers. Like Chicago's got a real problem that they're not going to, they don't force enough turnovers to be a good defensive team. So stylistic one is we move the basketball. How'd they do it? Well, we really changed a little bit of how we were playing. We ran 58 handoffs, which classifies as a pass every time. So that's part of it. Like, we increased our handoff game, and every time we run a handoff, that counts as a pass. It's a little bit of a misleading number because it's actually just, but we ran a handoff game that was coming from guys were getting pinned down, each on the baseline, coming around the handoff from the big, curling into the middle. Again, this started a little bit against Denver. We ran 51 handoffs against Denver. The coaching staff recognized that our pick and roll numbers are really pretty atrocious 5 games into the season. So we've increased our handoff play and decreased some of our pick and roll play, was the concept. Last night, we ran 58 handoffs. We've been running in the 30s all season. In fact, against San Antonio, we only ran 22. So a huge change, right? We were in the 5 previous games to the Denver game, we were averaging, I think it was 29.5 handoffs a game. We basically doubled that number last night to 58 handoffs. That's a nice change by the coaching staff, the players adapting, adjusting, trying to get better along the way, using the personnel the best they can. And last night was really, really successful. We were at 1.14 points per handoff. So you saw a different style of game. And you saw some interesting things. We ran at one point, I think we ran a handoff, which is Kyle Filipowski turning the quarter on a John Collins handoff. And John then can roll off of the handoffs. John was coming to get it, handing. We were forcing Vucevic to try to play defensively, which he's not a very good drop big. They don't have good rim defenders, and Jalen Smith can't move at all. And so we really started to take advantage of that. We didn't abandon the pick and roll game, which turned out to not be as successful, but was pretty good. And I think freed Keyonte. We ran 61 pick and rolls last night, which is the second most we've run in any game all year. In Denver, we just abandoned the pick and roll game, which may or may not have been the right move, considering the fact that the worst pick and roll combination in the NBA right now is Aaron Gordon and Nikola Vucevic defensively. But it was the second most we've run in a game. We ran 69 against the Spurs earlier this year, and we had a pretty good game. Our pick and roll numbers against Memphis and Dallas and Golden State were really atrocious. And so in San Antonio. So I'm going to back the coaching staff a little bit. Like, you're suddenly at 0.5, 0.6 points per pick and roll, one of the worst combinations in the league. You go to Denver and you're like, okay, we're running. I don't care how bad they are. We're running the pick and roll less. We brought it back last night. So you really saw a stylistic offensive change, maybe against the right opponent, by the coaching staff that led to more ball movement, more activity, more understanding of spacing, guys reacting correctly, and the Jazz had a really consistent offensive game last night. It was really, really good and really cool to see. And it led to a bunch of individual players who really broke out. I'm going to start on the defensive end because I thought Walker was pretty great last night. Then we'll touch on Keyonte, John Collins, and Cody Williams and how well they all played and touch on some of those things that are going on as we continue on a Jazz win over the Chicago Bulls. We're talking about as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. I want to introduce you to a new sponsor to Locked On. It's kind of a really creative and interesting company here to share with you. And it's an opportunity for you to, take advantage of a situation that sometimes doesn't feel great. So here's the deal. Listen up. If you're a renter, have you ever felt like you're stuck in a loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? I remember when my dad was like, you can't rent anymore. Right? But it's not that easy to buy a house, so you have to rent. So it's time to turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. And that's where our new sponsor, Built Rewards, comes in. BILT Rewards. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent, watch the Built points roll in, use points to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 airlines, 700,000 hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment that's designed to meet your lifestyle. So pay rent hassle-free through Built Rewards, BILT. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built Points has been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by Points Guy and Bankrate. So earn your points by paying rent right now when you go and join built.com/LockedOnNBA. That's join, JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNBA. Built.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. That's right, the official ticketing app of Locked On. Download Game Time app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Why Game Time? All-in toggle pricing, seat view, Game Time understands your system, gives you the best deals, gives you the Game Time pick, so you don't have to sit through 1,000 different seats at one time to figure it out. So it's convenience. It gives you the seat view. It gives you all-in pricing, gives you the best deals, gives you a price guarantee. It's everything you want out of a ticketing app. So go to Game Time right now. Download the app today. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first purchase. Terms to apply. We'll get you $20 off your first purchase at Game Time with the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Jazz win. Jazz win. Jazz win. I do think it was important they want to, hey, this is not going to be a year of a lot of wins. Like, I don't know if there's going to be 20. I don't know if there's going to be 10. I don't know if there's going to be 15. But there is some real value to notching one every now and then. I think it helps Will coach. Frankly, Will got asked in a press conference last night, like, what is his realistic expectations for this team? And, like, at some point, like, he's like, it's not an answerable question, but like, and he gives the answer that we're going to grow and we're going to compete and the younger players are going to get better and all that. But like, at some point you can almost hear him thinking like, are we going to, like, I don't know when we're winning games. Right. So like, there is this level of like, you've just got to be able, occasionally you've got to win basketball games to just keep your sanity, I think. And I think that was last night was important. The vibes around the team were surprisingly good, I would say. But I do think that really helped. All right, I've got to give Walker some credit here last night. What we want out of Walker is rim defense. And I thought last night he really played good rim defense. And Nikola Vucevic is a scorer. He's a funky scorer. He's kind of always been this kind of player that made everyone wonder, like, does he actually help you win? What does he do? And it's not always clear. But nonetheless, he's kind of their answer to, like, when things are not going right, this is what we're going to do, how we're going to do what we're going to do. And last night around the basket within 6 feet, they shot 26 of 49. 53%. That is just so bad. They were 22 of 40 in the restricted area. Now, they got 40 shots in the restricted area, which is not ideal on our part, but we held them to 55% shooting. It's pretty great. The other one that's going on right now, and this is a really small sample size, and I don't want to get too excited about it, but I think it's at least interesting. So last year in our pick and roll defense, one of the things that was a problem was that Keyonte George and Walker Kessler, who were the most common defensive combination, had tied for the worst defensive rating on the team at 1.06 points per pick and roll. The next thing was that Colin Sexton and Walker Kessler were also 1.06. So Walker Kessler's pick and roll defense last year was not superb. The number 2, it's early season, the number 2 pick and roll combination right now, guard and screen defender, are Walker Kessler and Keyonte George. Okay, it's super early. I'm not going to get super excited about this yet because I think it's probably too much, but it's a stretch of 7 games where Walker and Keyonte have been as good as any pick and roll combination there is in the league, frankly. That's pretty great because it wasn't great last year. And so I think that you have to kind of give them that. I think you've got to give them that credit and give them that kind of that growth that's taking place. We're not obviously great defensively, but that's a big difference. Keyonte himself on 62 pick and rolls is allowing 0.877 points per chance right now. 0.877 as the pick and roll defender. A year ago, Keyonte was, I think, over 1 point, which is kind of obscene. And so that's a real growth statement, and it's a growth of the Jazz putting in a defensive system this year with real fundamentals. Keyonte last year was 1.04 on pick and rolls. And this year you have Keyonte playing at 0.88. This is stylistically, the Jazz have changed a little bit what they're doing, and they have some real simple rules, and they're following them, and they're building the foundation defensively. But also, it's Walker Kessler playing the big in the pick and roll in a manner that's allowing Keyonte to have success. And it's great. This is the growth stuff we're talking about. On a win or a loss, we should be talking about that. When you start to kind of look at the best pick and roll defenders in the NBA, you take the top, I think 60 guys usually is what I look at. And, Rudy and those guys are all the best guys, right? We kind of know that. Defending the rim and defending the pick and roll are two different things to do because the pick and roll is much harder right now. Walker is in the elite guys right now defending the pick and roll in the NBA. Chet Holmgren is killing people, number 1 in the league. But of guys that have defended 60 pick and rolls right now, Walker's the 8th best in the NBA at 0.79 points per pick and roll. What were the numbers I gave you before? With whether it was with Colin Sexton or with Keyonte George, he was at 1.04 last year. This is a massive improvement. By the way, if you're wondering, the worst guys in the league as the screen defender are interesting. I thought this was interesting. So it's Jakob Poeltl and Naz Reid, which is why Minnesota's defense is not as good. Then Giannis, super interesting. There's been a lot of talk that Giannis' defense might not be as good. Nikola Vucevic. The next one is super fascinating. It's Trae Young. It's literally everyone in the world bringing Trae Young up to a pick to make him defend and make him deal with a switch. So great tribute to like the Jazz fundamental coaching defensively. What they're trying to do is what that is. But also like Keyonte and Walker are working at this. This is the process of the season, trying to get there, trying to make growth, and it's really neat to see. And I thought Walker was really good last night because the Bulls without Zach LaVine got into a lot of like Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic pick and roll stuff. And they never looked like they were making ground on it last night. they had some, but not. They didn't have a day. Like, I think is my point on it. Like, their pick and roll was the numbers afterwards were surprisingly good. I think their pick and roll was like at 1.2, but it didn't feel like they had a day out of it, if that makes sense. Our defense wasn't great last night, so that's part of it. But the rim defense was. All right, we had a bunch of guys that broke out last night. John Collins deserves a big credit. Keyonte George deserves a big credit. Let's start. We'll do Keyonte in a second. We'll do John Collins first. I just thought there was great awareness of what's going on. You don't have Jordan Clarkson. It's what John loves. You don't have Jordan Clarkson. You don't have Lauri Markkanen. We're short like 28 shots. Someone's got to own them. Cody Williams not going to do it, right? Kyle Filipowski's not going to do it. John Collins came out understanding, like, I get to shoot tonight. I need to use possessions. I need to be aggressive. And then the second thing that I thought John did is he really played the 4 well last night, which is, the feeling on John has kind of always been that he's a defensive 4 and a 5 center. And so that's always been a really complicated tweener concept to him. And last night I thought he played the 4 really, really well. Offensively, understanding how the Jazz are doing it, how to play with someone in the dunker spot, how to get his shots. And I thought there's a tendency when you're doing this to just go sit on the outside. And he didn't do that. He took 4 threes the whole game, and he hit 2 of them, which is great. He's an adequate 3-point shooter, but he's not. Instead, he just pounded the paint last night. He took 1 jump shot from 16 feet, and otherwise everything he did was within 5 feet of the basket. He pounded, recognized Chicago does not have rim defense. Vucevic is not a rim defender. Jalen Smith is not a rim defender. They don't have size. Patrick Williams is 6'7", despite the fact the Bulls drafted him number 4 like as though he was 6'9" or 6'10". And John had great recognition last night. And 5 assists. We are doing an entire segment tomorrow on John Collins' 5 assists. Because I just want to tribute to 5 assists. We have too many things to talk about today. But I really like 5 assists. It's kind of great. Nice job. So John Collins, I thought he was our post-game guest too last night. I thought he was really super and understood what we needed to do and played the role. And I thought he had a really tough game understanding the plays and where he was the night before. Okay, it's an adjustment. You're getting used to it. Like, I just thought, like, whoa. And last night, I thought he really worked at it. So great night for him. Keyonte George did exactly what Will Hardy said, and it came together. I'll explain next as we continue on Locked on Jazz. Locked on Jazz today, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Jazz still never been favored in a game this year, and they got the win last night. The Bulls have not been favored in a game either, by the way. That was the first time they had been favored all year. Just kind of a fun little note. It has absolutely nothing to do with this specific FanDuel read, but I just thought I'd share that little note with you. What I would like to tell you about FanDuel, though, is if you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel has a deal for you right now. You get $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL or the NBA all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Today's show is also brought to you by Hims. Go to hims.com/locked on. All right. Sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready for those so you can do your best at that moment. Hims provides you access to treatments that can help you stay active, ready, and last longer. So give you the boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Sex life is important. There's no need to be bashful about it. It's time to make sure that it's at its peak. Through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping a foot outside your door. You ever feel like you need a little boost? It's time to stop worrying about performance and get Hims to push you over the edge. Feel confident knowing that you're ready to go. Hims is changing men's healthcare, providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of Dr. ED trusted treatments like chewable hard mints or Viagra or Cialis, and their generics for you up to 95% cheaper. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked-on. That's hims.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatments. hims.com/locked-on. The products mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions required online consultation with healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices varies based on product and subscriptions. hims.com/locked-on. By the way, there's a lot of news out there today. Election day. Please go vote. If you don't want to sit, I've decided, I bet you no one else is so, I decided that if I was reading and I was reading good news to me, things that were good news to me, might not be good news to you. This is the beauty of this. But I bet you had the same reaction. I had the reaction recently that if I got good news to me on things that I thought were important, that I was doubtful that it was true. And then if I read bad news, I started to dread the outcome. And I'll bet you feel the same way, regardless of what side you're on. So here's my suggestion. Watch the NBA 24/7 channel today on YouTube. Yeah, that was really just a plug. 24/7 YouTube channel, because it won't make you feel either of those ways. You'll just be like, oh, this is NBA. This is fun. This is recreation. I enjoy this. And you'll feel good about things. How's that? That's it. Or you could go down to your neighbor and debate him and fight and argue and be really mad and angry and do all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about Walker Kessler's impact on the Jazz defense this year? 61% said he's shown improvement. There's room to grow. 21% he's been a game changer. 10% said he's been their bright spot. And 8% are cynics who are not convinced yet of his impact. That is what the poll question said yesterday on our YouTube community page about the play of Walker Kessler. Will Hardy said the other day about Keyonte George, just take the right shots and the percentages will begin to follow. One of the problems we talked about early in the season on Keyonte was, my goodness gracious, if you even shot well with your shot selection, you're going to have a terrible day. If you recall, if you're an everydayer here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, we walked through one of the night in which I think Keyonte went 5-18 and basically said, like, if he shot well tonight, he's still having a bad night. Well, last night, every single shot that Keyonte George took was at the rim or a three. And that's Will Hardy's point. It doesn't mean he can't take mid-range jumpers when they're there, but don't live by them. Because if you try to live by the floater and you try to live by the mid-range shot, you will be an inefficient offensive player. It's just not possible to do it any other way. And so one of Keyonte's real strengths is he's a 35, 36% off the bounce three-point shooter. And he got that back last night. He started hitting the off the bounce three again, which he had not. He is not actually a great catch and shoot three-point guy. We'll have to, that's going to be the next step for him, is he's got to get that number. We've talked about this. If he can get that number up to 38, 39% where it should be, then he really becomes a force. So, and it's getting there. He's at 36% on catch and shoots right now. And if he gets the pull-up three back to 36%, then he's a 36% three-point shooter. If he can get that one to 39 and keep that 36 really, really good for an off-the-bounce three-point shooter, and then he's a bona fide shooter. Like, then all this bad shooting number stuff goes away. He's 19% on off-the-bounce three-point shots for the season. Like, that's the game. That's the game he did not have so far this year. He had not been balanced. He had not been on it. He was 5 of 26 for the season. And and he's going to get better. And that's going to be the shot that brings him back around. Last night, he was 4 for 9. So you can do the math on that. He's 5 of 26 on the season. He was 4 of 9. He was 1 of 17 on off-the-bounce threes before last night. Okay, that's weird. That's not going to last. But last night, what we saw at a Key was a shot chart that's a livable shot chart. It's actually not even livable. It's great. Everything was at the rim or a three. Some of them were catch and shoots. Some of them were off the bounce. He is probably going to be a predominant. If Keyonte is going to bust out, what did he take, 12 threes last night? If Keyonte is going to bust out 12 threes in a game last night, like he did, he's going to have to take not probably 7 to 8 to 9 of them as off the bounce threes. So that's what he did. He went 4 of 9 on off the bounce threes, which is awesome, 44%. It's a really good game. And then he went 2 of 3 on catch and shoot threes. And that's how you shoot 50% from. But more importantly, he took his other 6 shots all in the paint around the rim. Now, he only went 2 of 6 on those, but it's fine. Like, he'll go 3 of 6 on another night. And then there'll probably be a night where he goes 4 of 6 and he makes those shots. Like, that's how Keyonte, if he's going to be successful, that's the shot chart he has to have. And then he didn't turn the ball over last night. 9 assists and just 2 turnovers. That's a solid game. Now, nice to have that opponent, because that opponent has been torched by guards all season long. Desmond Bane dropped 30 on him. Dame Lillard dropped 30 on him. I think Brooklyn Cam Thomas dropped $1 million on him. So that is a team that has struggles, as we talked about the Jazz exploiting their offense with the handoffs and the pick and rolls and the bad bigs and this and that. That's been that, and the bigs are dropping, and then they're not very good at dropping. So Key gets the off the bounce 3 against them, and then Key gets to the rim against them. That's great. You got to do it against somebody. Like Oklahoma City, you're going to go walk out and just feel like you got bludgeoned, go 4 of 15, because that's where they are defensively right now. Chet Holmgren is annihilating people defensively. Okay, we're going to move on. Milwaukee's another team that doesn't force turnovers. Is struggling badly. We'll see whether the Jazz can take advantage of it. So, super fun night last night for the Jazz. Bunch of highlights. Cody Williams really adjusted his game as well. I've run out of time. I'll get that to you tomorrow. We got 3 days of talk. I might have Lauren Green on. I might see if I can get this, have a big fun group tomorrow afternoon or this afternoon. Ron Boone, Thurl Bailey, Craig Bowler, Jack, all of us zoom it in together, do a show, and have it for you this week. I think that'd be really fun. All right, guess what? If you're on video, I'm going to send you to the first ever NBA 24/7 channel on YouTube at Locked On NBA. And if you're on audio, make sure you check out the new Locked On NBA with 2 shows every day. Game night recap at the end of every night and a fun, frolicking show with Doug Branson, Matt Moore, and Hayes every day on Locked On.